I was standing in my kitchen folding laundry when my son walked through my front door. Without knocking, his face set in that hard expression I didn't recognize anymore. "Mama," he said, not even greeting me properly, "we need to talk about your money." I looked up from the towels in my hands, my heart already starting to pound because I knew that tone. That wasn't my baby talking. That was someone else, someone who'd been whispering in his ear, changing him from the inside out. "What about my money, Marcus?" I asked, keeping my voice calm even though my hands had started to shake. He sat down at my kitchen table like he owned the place, pulled out his phone, and said the words that would break my heart into pieces. "From now on, I want your paycheck sent to my account. Your pension too. You're getting older, and you don't know how to manage money properly. Simone and I will handle everything for you. We'll give you an allowance for what you need." I stood there with a dish towel in my hands, staring at my only child, the boy I'd raised alone after his father died, the man I'd worked 3 jobs to put through college, and I couldn't find words. Simone, his wife of 2 years, a woman who'd never worked a day in her life, who spent money like water, who looked at me like I was nothing but an old woman in the way. And now she had my son asking for control of everything I'd worked 62 years to earn. "Marcus," I said slowly, setting down the towel, "are you asking me to sign over my financial independence to you?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable for just a moment, but then his jaw set again. "It's for your own good, Mama. You're not as sharp as you used to be. Last week you forgot to pay your electric bill. I was in the hospital. Baby," I said quietly, "I had pneumonia. Remember? You visited me once." He waved his hand like that didn't matter. "That's exactly my point. What if something happens to you and your bills don't get paid? What if you get scammed? Elderly people lose money all the time. We're trying to protect you." But I heard what he didn't say. I heard Simone's voice underneath his words. Her manipulation wrapped up in concern that wasn't real. And standing there in my own kitchen, the kitchen where I'd fed this boy every meal, nursed every fever, celebrated every victory, I realized something that made me want to cry and scream all at once. My son was trying to steal from me. He just didn't know that I knew exactly what he and his wife were planning. And what he really didn't know was that I'd already taken steps to protect everything I'd worked for. Because 3 weeks ago, Simone had made a mistake. She'd left her laptop open at my house, and I'd seen the emails. I'd seen the plan. I'd seen exactly what they intended to do with my money once they had control. Marcus thought he was talking to a confused old woman who'd just hand over her life savings. But I was about to teach my baby boy the hardest lesson he'd ever learn. Sometimes the people you underestimate are the ones who see you most clearly. Let me take you back so you understand how I got here. Sitting across from my own son while he tried to con me out of everything I'd worked for. My name is Dorothy Mae Johnson, and I've been a nanny for 43 years. I started when I was 19 years old, fresh from my mama's house, needing work to help support my family. A white family in the Garden District hired me to care for their 3 children, and I was good at it. Real good. I loved those babies like they were my own. Raised them with patience and firmness and all the love I had in me. When I was 25, I married Raymond Johnson, a good man who worked construction and made me laugh every single day. We had Marcus a year later, and I thought my life was perfect. But God had other plans. Raymond died when Marcus was 7, a work accident, gone in an instant, leaving me a widow with a small boy and a heart that felt like it would never be whole again. I went back to nanny work full-time because I had no choice. For the next 30 years, I worked for family after family, some kind and some cruel. Some who treated me like furniture and some who treated me like family. I raised their children while raising my own son, worked long hours for modest pay, saved every penny I could in a bank account that grew slowly but steadily. I put Marcus through college working 3 jobs, nanny work during the day, cleaning offices at night, and weekend catering when I could get it. I was so tired during those years that I'd fall asleep standing up sometimes. But I never complained because I wanted my baby to have opportunities I never had. I wanted him to have choices. Marcus graduated with a business degree, got a good job at an accounting firm, and I was so proud I cried at his graduation. This was what I'd worked for. This was my success. Watching my son walk across that stage knowing he'd never have to struggle the way I did. Then he met Simone. She came into his life 3 years ago, a pretty girl with expensive tastes and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. She worked in marketing, or so she said, though I never saw evidence of any actual job. She was always shopping, always posting photos online of restaurants and trips and designer bags. When Marcus brought her to meet me, she looked around my small, neat house with barely concealed disappointment. "This is cute," she'd said, in a tone that meant the opposite. Very simple. I didn't like her from that first meeting, but I kept my mouth shut because Marcus was happy, or at least he seemed happy. They got married quickly, too quickly for my comfort, and I noticed things starting to change in my son. He called less. He visited less. When he did come by, he seemed distracted, always checking his phone, always in a hurry to leave. Simone never came with him after that first year, always had some excuse. And Marcus started asking me questions about my finances. How much was my pension? Did I have savings? Had I made a will? Who would inherit when I died? I answered honestly because he was my son and I trusted him. But something about the questions made me uneasy. 6 months ago, Simone started being friendly. Suddenly she was calling me, inviting me to lunch, stopping by my house with coffee. She'd ask about my health, about my medications, about whether I was managing okay on my own. She'd make little comments about my age, about how I was slowing down, about how it must be so hard living alone at 62. I'm 62, not 92, and my mind is as sharp as it's ever been. But Simone talked to me like I was already senile. Then 3 weeks ago, she came over to drop off some groceries. Groceries I hadn't asked for and didn't need, but she insisted. She set up her laptop at my kitchen table to pay some bills while she was there. And then her phone rang. She stepped out onto the porch to take the call, and I don't know what made me do it, but I glanced at her computer screen. It was open to her email, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There were emails between Simone and Marcus, discussing me like I was a business transaction. Once we have power of attorney, one email read, "We can move her into that state facility and sell her house. The property alone is worth at least $300K in this market." Another email, "She's got about $200K in savings plus the pension. If we can get control before she makes any changes, we're set. Just keep acting concerned about her health." I stood there reading email after email, my hand over my mouth to keep from crying out loud. My son and his wife were planning to take everything from me, put me in a nursing home, and spend my money. They were waiting for me to get just sick enough, just confused enough, that they could convince a court I needed a guardian. And they were pretending to care about me while they did it. I heard Simone coming back in, and I moved away from the laptop fast. Went back to putting away the groceries she'd brought. She never knew I'd seen, but from that moment on, I knew exactly what kind of game they were playing, and I started making my own plans. After Marcus left my house that day with his demand that I sign over my finances, I sat at my kitchen table for a long time, just thinking. Part of me wanted to believe there was some misunderstanding, that my boy couldn't really be trying to steal from his own mother. But I'd seen those emails. I knew the truth. The question was what to do about it. I could confront him directly, but I knew he'd just deny it, blame Simone, promise to change. Or worse, they'd speed up their plans, try to have me declared incompetent before I could stop them. I'd seen it happen to other elderly folks, children who got greedy, who convinced doctors their parents were confused, who took control and drained everything. I wasn't going to let that happen to me, so I made some calls. First, I called my lawyer, Mr. Thompson, who'd been handling my affairs for 20 years. I told him everything, the emails, Marcus's request, my concerns. Dorothy, he said gently, I'm so sorry you're going through this, but I'm glad you came to me now. Let's make sure everything is protected. We set up an irrevocable trust, putting my house and my savings into it with me as the beneficiary, but no one else able to access it, without my explicit written permission and Mr. Thompson's approval. We updated my will to include specific provisions preventing anyone from contesting it. And we created a medical directive making it clear I was of sound mind and body, witnessed and notarized, so no one could claim otherwise. Then I called Mrs. Patterson, the woman I'd worked for as a nanny 30 years ago. She was in her 80s now, but sharp as a tack, and we'd stayed close over the years. I told her what was happening, and she didn't hesitate. Dorothy, you come stay with me for a while. Let's see what they do when they can't find you easily. Let them show their true colors. So I packed a bag and moved into Mrs. Patterson's guest house, leaving my place empty. I called Marcus and left a message saying I was visiting a friend and would be away for a few weeks. Didn't give details. Within 2 days, Simone was at my house, trying the locks, peering in windows. A neighbor told me later she'd been furious to find me gone. Marcus called repeatedly, his voicemails shifting from concerned to irritated to demanding. Mama, where are you? Why aren't you answering? We need to talk about your financial situation. This is serious. I didn't call back right away. I wanted to see how far they'd go. A week later, Marcus showed up at my door with papers. Legal papers. A petition for emergency guardianship, claiming I was showing signs of dementia and incapacity, and needed immediate intervention for my own safety. My own son was trying to have me declared incompetent so he could take control of everything. I let him in, and we sat in my living room, the living room where I'd rocked him to sleep as a baby, where we'd celebrated his birthdays, where he'd cried on my shoulder when his father died. Mama, he said, and he actually looked worried, like he'd convinced himself this was real. We're concerned about you. You disappeared for a week without telling anyone where you were. That's not normal. We think you need help. I'm visiting a friend, I said calmly. I'm a grown woman, Marcus. I don't need to report my whereabouts to you. But you do, Mama. His voice rose, frustrated. What if something happened to you? What if you fell? Or got confused? Or, I'm not confused, I interrupted. My voice still calm but steel underneath. I'm 62 years old. I worked until last year. I manage my own household, pay my own bills, drive my own car. There's nothing wrong with my mind, and you know it. He shifted uncomfortably, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt maybe, or calculation. The doctor said. What doctor? I asked sharply. I haven't seen any doctor recently except for my regular checkup. And Dr. Williams said I'm in excellent health for my age. Marcus pulled out more papers. Dr. Reynolds evaluated you based on our concerns and agrees that you're showing early signs of cognitive decline. He's willing to testify that you need supervised care. I felt cold rage settle over me. They'd found some doctor who'd never even met me to sign papers saying I was incompetent. Marcus, I said quietly, look at me. Look at your mama and tell me the truth. Is this really about protecting me? Or is this about my money? He couldn't hold my gaze. It's not about money, Mama. It's about making sure you're safe. Then why? I asked, pulling out my phone. Did your wife email you 3 weeks ago saying, and I quote, once we have power of attorney, we can move her into that state facility and sell her house? I watched all the color drain from his face. Why did she write she's got about $200K in savings plus the pension? If we can get control before she makes any changes, we're set. Why would she write those things, baby? If this was really about my safety. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. You went through Simone's email? She left her laptop open in my house. I said, I saw what I saw, and now you're here with papers trying to take everything from me. And you're lying to my face about why. Mama, I can explain. No, I said, standing up. No more explaining. No more lies. You get out of my house right now, Marcus. You take your papers and your fake doctor and your scheming wife, and you get out. Mama, please. His voice cracked, and for a moment he sounded like my little boy again. But I couldn't let that soften me. Not now. I said get out. My voice was loud. Louder than I'd ever raised it to him in his whole life. You tried to steal from me. You tried to have me declared crazy so you could take everything I worked my whole life for. Your father would be ashamed of you. I'm ashamed of you. Tears were running down his face now, but I didn't care. You got 72 hours to withdraw that petition, Marcus. If you don't, my lawyer is filing elder abuse charges against you and Simone. I got copies of those emails. I got witnesses to your harassment. I got documentation of everything, and I will press charges. You understand me? He stumbled toward the door, still trying to speak, but I just pointed. Out. Now. When he was gone, I locked the door behind him and then I finally let myself cry. I cried for the boy he used to be, for the man I thought he'd become, for the relationship we'd never have again. But underneath the grief, there was steel. Nobody was taking what I'd earned, not even my own child. The next day, Marcus withdrew the guardianship petition. Mr. Thompson called to tell me, his voice relieved. He also fired Dr. Reynolds and issued a public apology saying there was a misunderstanding. Dorothy, I think you scared him straight. Good, I said, but I wasn't done. I called Marcus and told him to bring Simone to my house that evening. Both of you, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. They showed up looking nervous. Simone in designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Marcus unable to meet my eyes. I sat them down at my kitchen table and put a folder in front of them. Open it, I said. Inside were copies of all of Simone's emails, bank statements showing their spending habits and debt, and documentation of every lie they'd told me over the past year. I know everything, I said quietly. I know Simone hasn't worked in 2 years. I know your $60,000 in credit card debt. I know you were planning to steal from me, put me in a home, and use my money to fund your lifestyle. Simone's face went hard. You had no right to go through my private emails. You had no right to plot to rob me. I shot back. And before you start with the excuses, I don't want to hear them. I want to tell you both something, and I want you to listen carefully. I looked at Marcus, my baby, my only child. I worked my whole life. Marcus, I scrubbed floors and changed diapers and worked night shifts while you were sleeping. I went without so you could have. I chose between paying the electric bill and buying myself new shoes, so I could afford your school supplies. And I did it gladly because I loved you, because you were my son, and I wanted better for you than I had. My voice broke, but I kept going. Your daddy died when you were 7 years old, and I promised him on his deathbed that I'd make sure you had opportunities, that I'd raise you right, that I'd teach you to be a good man, an honest man, a man who took care of people instead of using them. And I thought I did. I really thought I did. Tears were streaming down Marcus's face now. Mama, but somewhere along the way, you forgot. I continued. You forgot where you came from. You forgot what real love looks like. You let this woman, I gestured at Simone, who was sitting there with her arms crossed, defiant even now, convince you that your mama was nothing but a bank account to drain, that I was too old and stupid to matter, that my life's work was just there for you to take. I pushed the folder toward Simone. You want to know what real work looks like? Read those bank statements. See how every single deposit in my account came from my own hands, my own labor. Nobody gave me anything. Nobody handed me a trust fund or paid my bills while I went shopping. I earned every single penny, and I'll die before I let you take it from me. Simone finally spoke, her voice cold. We were trying to help you. Marcus was worried about you. Stop lying. I shouted, and she actually flinched. Just stop. I'm not senile. I'm not confused, and I'm not buying what you're selling anymore. You're a gold digger who found a lonely man with a soft heart, and you've been manipulating him ever since. But it ends now. I turned back to Marcus. You got a choice to make, baby. You can stay married to this woman who's poisoning you, who's turning you into someone I don't even recognize. And you can live with the consequences of what you tried to do to me. Or you can remember who you really are. Remember what your daddy taught you. Remember what I taught you. But either way, you're never getting control of my money. Never. I've made sure of that legally. And if you ever try something like this again, I will press charges and you will go to jail. Do you understand me? Marcus was sobbing now, his head in his hands. I'm so sorry, Mama. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. We're in so much debt. And Simone kept saying you'd be better off with help. And I convinced myself it was true. But I know it wasn't. I know I was wrong. Please, Mama. Please forgive me. I wanted to forgive him right then. Every part of me that was his mother wanted to take him in my arms and tell him it was okay. We'd figure it out together. But I couldn't. Not yet. You broke something between us, Marcus. Something that might not ever be fixed. And I need you to understand that actions have consequences. You don't get to try to destroy me and then just say sorry and have everything go back to normal. I stood up. You two need to leave now. You need to go home and figure out your life without my money. You need to face your debts, cut up your credit cards, and learn to live within your means. And Marcus, you need to decide if this marriage is worth losing your mama over. Because right now, that's where we're at. Simone stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without a word, her heels clicking on my floor. Marcus lingered, looking at me with such pain in his eyes. Mama, I love you. I'm sorry. I'll make this right somehow. I hope you do. Baby, I said softly. I really hope you do. But that's up to you now. and I watched him walk out of my house, not knowing if he'd ever really come back. That was 8 months ago now, my dears. I'm sitting here today in my own home, the home I worked 43 years to pay off, drinking tea from my favorite cup, and I can tell you the ending of this story. It's not the ending I wanted, but it's the one that's true. Marcus did eventually leave Simone. It took him 3 months, but he finally saw her for what she was when she tried to convince him to sue me for his rightful inheritance even though I'm still alive. He filed for divorce, and I heard through mutual friends that she's already moved on to some other man with money. Marcus comes by sometimes now, every few weeks. We sit on my porch and talk, careful conversations where we're both still healing, both still learning to trust again. He got a second job, is paying down his debt slowly, going to therapy to understand how he let things get so bad. He apologizes every time he sees me, and I tell him I forgive him, though I'm not sure my heart has caught up with my words yet. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Time will tell. I learned something from all this, something important. I learned that the people who love you aren't always the people who protect you. Sometimes love gets twisted up with greed, with fear, with weakness. I learned that you can raise someone right and still watch them make terrible choices. I learned that being old doesn't mean being powerless, and being kind doesn't mean being a fool. I learned to protect myself, to trust my instincts, to stand up even when it means standing against the person you love most in the world. Most of all, I learned that the truth is worth fighting for, even when it breaks your heart to speak it. Marcus thought I was just an old woman who wouldn't notice what he was doing, who would be easy to manipulate because I loved him. What he didn't know was that loving someone doesn't mean letting them destroy you. What he didn't know was that I've spent my whole life watching families from the inside, learning when to speak and when to stay silent, when to trust and when to protect myself. What he didn't know was that his mama was stronger than he gave her credit for. I still have my house. I still have my savings. I still have my dignity and my independence. And I still have hope that one day, my son will fully become the man I raised him to be, the man his father would be proud of. But even if he doesn't, even if our relationship never fully heals, I'll be okay. Because I fought for myself when it mattered most. I didn't let fear or grief or love make me a victim. I stood my ground, told the truth, and protected what was mine. And there's power in that, my dears. There's strength in knowing you can survive even your deepest betrayal. There's peace in knowing that you fought back, that you didn't go gentle into that good night, that you made them see you as a person with worth and rights and a voice that demanded to be heard. My son thought he could take everything from me, but what he didn't know was that the most important things, my strength, my dignity, my sense of self, those were never his to take. Those belonged to me, and me alone. And nobody, not even the child I birthed and raised and loved beyond measure, was going to steal them from me. That day, I learned that sometimes protecting yourself means standing against the people you love most. And that's okay. That's survival. That's strength. That's truth. If my story touched your heart, my dear, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the truth deserves to be heard.